Hello. Can you hear me okay in the back? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to be talking about compositional UI styling. And before I dive into this, the concepts here can be applied to other platforms in Swift and iOS. This is kind of a Swift and iOS focus talk. So Mac OS, Android, whatever. And so talking about UI styling, there's a couple of goals that I have that, or a few goals that come to mind. We want the styling to be reusable, so you want to have a consistent style throughout your app. You want the styling to be simple to use, so flexible if you need to change a style, and also not a headache to pick up and understand how to apply a style to a particular view. And then the last one I have here is you want it to be discoverable. So you want to be able to easily find where the styles live, and you don't want it to be like sprinkled throughout your app. OK, so what are the ways to style? And I generally categorize them into two buckets, visually and programmatically styling. The styling visually comes down to using interface builder. So if you're familiar with iOS or Mac OS development, you have interface builder, and you kind of have a WYSIWYG-like interface where you can drag UI elements onto the screen. And then using the inspector, you can change the attributes like background, color, or font size and type. You could also define the way the layout looks, so the constraints between different layouts. But circling back to those goals for UI styling, visually styling one-off like this kind of falls short. When you want these to be reusable, then you're kind of copying between nib files or storyboard, and that's not really scalable. And then it's, I guess, easy to use in the sense that you just have a bunch of attributes that you're changing. But the discoverability is also kind of falls flat in that you have these views, and if you want to reuse them, how do you find them? You have to look for them in your storyboard files. OK, so moving on to programmatically, there are other ways that I'm going to mention. I'm going to highlight two of the main ways of styling programmatically. A couple of the other ways that I'm going to leave out are UI appearance, so we can talk about that later, and also using extensions to style, but that kind of falls similar to inheritance, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. Okay. So one-off views. This is similar to visually styling in the sense that you get access to a UI element in code. You can change all the properties and the attributes to get the style that you want. The problem that you have with this is that it's kind of similar to visually styling in the sense that it's not really, it's kind of easy to use. It's a little bit hard to discover where these things are, and scalability is kind of, it's not non-existent. So you'd have to copy and paste these anytime you want to reuse these styles. So let's move on from this, and let's talk about the main way that we typically style is through inheritance. So you create these abstract style classes, in this case, base circle. And they have some kind of an abstracted out kind of style. So in this case, it would be the circle, the shape of the view, and maybe a background color. And then what you would do is create more specialized subclasses of that to give you the styles that you're looking for. So in this case, I have a text circle that maybe puts some text inside the circle. And the interesting thing here is that even going one layer deep, you're already making trade-offs. So this UI label lives inside of another view, and so you have to go 2 layers deep to modify that label's text. And then you always have to, with inheritance, carry the mental weight of, well, what's the superclass doing or its superclass doing? And you don't want to break that inheritance hierarchy. OK, so continuing with inheritance, UI view being the main visual element that you have to subclass, and also continuing with the circle theme. You have this base circle, and you create this parent class. And like I had before, maybe you have a circle with a label inside of it. And then maybe you want another type of circle, something else specialized, like a circle with a border on it. Maybe you want to have no background color and to highlight some element on the screen. And the interesting thing that arises pretty quickly with inheritance is what if you want to have both of those styles? So you want to have a label with a border and also a circle. And there's no multiple inheritance in Swift, so you now have to take this mental model of your inheritance hierarchy and reconfigure it to accommodate this new style. So maybe you make the border the parent of the label, and that would work. But now what if you want to throw in all of these other things? So you want to have some layout or some text color, and now you have to reconfigure that mental model all over again. It kind of blows up a little bit. Inheritance carries this weight with it that's difficult. And so although going back to those goals, you kind of have maybe a styling system that's a little bit more reusable, it's not really that simple to use. And the discoverability, I'll give it like an eh, because you typically end up scattering the styles all throughout your apps. So what do? Composition over inheritance is a very common thing that we have, that we hear, an adage. And so how does this apply to styling? So if we think of the stylings as functions that apply a very particular style, like background color, and compose it with another function that does its job, which is maybe giving styling the label inside, and then we smash all of those functions together, we can create a new function that gives us whatever style that we're looking for. So how do we accomplish that in Swift? We can have an operator, the diamond operator, and all this operator does is you give it a function f of a and g of a. Both a's are UI elements in this case. And maybe f of a is styling the background color, and g of a is styling the border width and color. And you compose them with the diamond operator to give you something that does both of those styles together. One thing to note about the diamond operator in this context is that you typically want your functions to be associative, so that you're not overriding a style with the next function, like the background color, and then you're changing the background color again. If there's a really great talk by Brendan Case last year at the Functional Swift conference. Beyond types, he talks all about the laws and the mathematics behind diamond operator. It's really great. Recommend you check that one out. Okay, so I'll give a quick demo because that seems to be the theme. All right, obviously that's super. Can you see it in the back? More? Even more? What's that? Oh, yeah, sure. Wow. Is that really bad still? Oh, no, that's okay, right? All right. Okay, so what you have here is this is the operator that I mentioned. And I'm not going to talk more about that. But you start defining these functions. So you can style the background. It takes in a UI color. And then it sets the UI views background color. And then you can have another function that styles the border. This does the border width and color. And then you start getting into composing these functions. So you can have a style view that's a circle, and it's the base, and it takes a particular background color and also gives you that round shape. One quick thing to note about the naming here is that from English standards, it's not very typical, normal to talk out loud. But the thing I like about this naming is that if you have the general category style, and then you can drill down into more and more specific things about what you're styling, you end up getting, let me see if the autocomplete helps me. You can type style, and then it tells you all the styles that you have throughout your app. And if you want it related to view, you can then drill further down. So it's something that I really like about this naming. And then there's other styles that I've defined here. So circles that are labels, and then this really more specific one that's a circle check mark. Let me run this. OK. So that's super tiny also, right? I don't know. Not exactly sure how to make that bigger. But since they're circles, hopefully it's OK in the back. So all you do is you grab, say, for the base circle, you create a UI view, and you grab that function, and you pass it the UI view element, and then it applies that style and then produces an output that you can see. One thing to change here that, let's say your designer at the bottom, I guess it's kind of hard to see, but the bottom circle here has a border, and let's say that your designer comes to you and is like, I don't want borders around my checkmark views anymore. And so it's actually pretty easy to change. So if I wanted to get rid of it, this is the style for that circle checkmark that you had up there, or that I had up there. And if you want to style the view circle base, and you can compose that with styling, style the label base. You just quickly get rid of the border there, which is really nice. I apologize for it being so small. I'm not exactly sure how you make the playground live view bigger. OK, so let me flip back. OK, so takeaways from this way of styling is they're very reusable. You can easily style any kind of view this way. All you have to do is call that function. They're simple to use. You can reconfigure those functions in any way that you want to create whatever style you want. So they're very lightweight, which is the next bullet that I have. And they're discoverable. If you name it the way that I had it, then you can see your entire style sheet just using the help that Xcode gives you in autocomplete, which is kind of nice. Something I really like about this is that if you have an existing code base, it's super easy to add it. They're just functions. You could define that one operator, and you can add it. You don't like it, remove it. They're functions. You inline those styles. No big deal. And then kind of playing into the discoverability a little bit, where this the second to last bullet is that if you extract these out into a framework, you can have a playground that shows you all your styles. So you can show anybody that you're onboarding or a designer, say, look at all the styles that I have in my app, which is kind of nice. And then I typically put these all in the same file so that you have one file that's like a consolidation of all your styles. So you don't have to use the naming exactly. And flexible, like kind of said, you can easily configure the functions. OK, so a few references for this. The first two are from the Point Free site. This is not anything I came up with. Brandon and Steven have awesome videos. I'm also not paid or anything to plug Point Free, but it's a really great site. And then the Brandon Case talk that I mentioned is here, custom operators in Swift. And the last one is an interesting Python talk about composition and inheritance. Cool.
Any questions? Do you see a need for writing functions that make UI view instances as parameters versus writing extensions on UI view as instance methods?
So I think if I heard the question, do I see a meaningful difference between global functions that take in instances of UI view, styling them, versus having extensions on the specific types that give you the generated like factory methods? OK. Yeah. It's interesting. This plays into, I guess, some of the discoverability that I really like styling it with these global functions in the sense that they're very easy to find, and I don't have to have somebody tell me, oh, well, UI button has this one extension, and maybe I put an extension in one place, and then somebody didn't find it in my code base, and then somebody else made a similar extension on UI button that does a very similar kind of styling. And so keeping them all kind of consolidated as functions streamlines the discoverability and the onboarding. And then with extensions, you fall into this somewhat of like an inheritance kind of issue where if you want to compose the different styles, it's a little bit more restrictive in that sense. Anything else? Well, I think you should definitely check out the Brendan Case's video. So it kind of depends. If you need a specific order, then you can build that in, and then if you're using that particular style, like that order's preserved. Yeah, I haven't really come across too many cases like that scenario where I'm fighting with different styles overriding one another, but I'd suggest playing with it a little bit to figure out. It's kind of like a weak answer, but I haven't really explored too many styles that overrode each other in that sense.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much.
Cool.